Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining me early on this Monday morning to kick off Open Data Week on this virtual event. My name is Mallory Sheff. I'm a director of product and programs at DataKind, and I have the privilege of spearheading our financial inclusion and economic opportunity portfolio. Today, I'm really excited to be sharing more about not only our work at DataKind, but more specifically, introducing you all to our economic opportunity Datascape and how this product might help you, your organizations, or some of your stakeholders in the sector better leverage data and data-driven insights. So for today's conversation, I will be just introducing DataKind to share a little bit about who we are and what we're doing. I'll talk a little bit about data science for financial inclusion, what we're driving forward, and how we define financial inclusion and economic opportunity, that we all kind of go into this conversation with the same foundation. I will then introduce our economic opportunity datascape and do a high-level walkthrough. I'll encourage you all after this session to go back and play around with the tool and the product. We'll always welcome stakeholder feedback as well. And I'll talk a little bit about how to use the EO Datascape. How are we best able to leverage the data, and where is DataKind going from here? This is an excitingly not ginormous session, which I always appreciate because it's really an opportunity for us to connect, to ask questions, to have some discussion points. So I will encourage you to please use the chat box function to ask any questions that you want. If there are good moments for me to pause and answer those general questions, I will be delighted to. If not, I will make sure that at the end of our session, we'll have ample time to go into Q&A. So to get started a little bit and introduce who we are, DataKind is a global nonprofit organization who has for the past 12 plus years worked with social impact organizations. And our aim is really to provide them with the knowledge and capacity to leverage data and data science. Our mission is really to tackle the world's toughest challenges with data science and AI to improve the capabilities, reach, and scale of social impact organizations. We have the privilege of working with stakeholders across the US as well globally, and we fully enter into any collaboration fully co-created to really think about how can we ensure sustainable and ethical impact. So as briefly mentioned, first, at DataKind, we really aim to help these mission-driven organizations identify data and AI opportunities. We go through a very comprehensive and thorough scoping process where we ask tough questions, very broad questions at times, like what keeps you up at night, but also drill down into the details to understand how organizations use and leverage data for data-driven insights. We at DataKind are the first to say that data science and AI is not always the solution to problems, but when they are, how can we work together and collaborate to develop solutions that are sustainable and ethically used? And so success at DataKind is really when our partners and DataKind together have fully created data science solutions that are not only adopted widely, either within the organization or within a sector, but that these solutions contribute positively to sector level problems that we've identified jointly. And so excitingly, for the past 4.5 years, DataKind has been doing a deep dive in looking at financial inclusion and economic opportunity worldwide. How can data science, and AI solutions be catalytic to really better leveraging data and new methodologies and approaches and supporting the missions of organizations that are working in this sector? So just to make sure that we lay a little bit of a foundation in terms of what we mean by financial inclusion and economic opportunity, some of these terms can be very broad, can be used interchangeably. For us at DataKind, financial inclusion is the availability and access to financial services and products for all members of society, regardless of their income and social status. Inclusive financial services really means that people can, for example, store and increase savings. They can cope with unexpected economic shocks, and they can access more affordable social benefits. Ultimately, these economic opportunities help lead them out of poverty. When we talk about economic opportunity, this term is a little bit broader. Economic opportunity, more generally, aims to reduce poverty, inequality, and unemployment. And that really focuses on creating an inclusive economy where everyone has a fair chance to succeed. So at DataKind, our work tackles both financial inclusion in the quote unquote restrictive sense of the term. So really focusing on things like access to credit, access to savings, access to bank account, as well as looking at economic opportunity more broadly, especially in the context of the United States of America. Social sector, we believe that there are multiple areas that contribute to economic opportunity, such as safe and affordable housing, or even thinking about access to small businesses, credit opportunities. All of that truly ladders up to economic opportunity and the well-being of communities more generally. And so at DataKind, for the past 2.5 years, we have been working across these sectors. We have developed a cohort of projects with 6 social impact organizations for these long-term bespoke engagements. One organization collaborated with us in what we called a hackathon data dive event. But in developing these solutions, these one-to-one solutions bespoke for our social impact sector collaborators, as well as holding in-depth stakeholder interviews, engaging in multiple conferences with thought leaders, and collaborating on external convenings, we started to map out this sector overall to understand what are some of these key pain points that sector stakeholders are feeling, and how are these key pain points potentially solved with a public product that is something that could really be available to multiple stakeholders to help overcome some of their challenges. Thanks to these conversations and to the actual implementation of some of our solutions, we developed 3 publicly available products at DataKind, which we launched last fall in September of 2024. We have our economic opportunity Datascape, which I'll look forward to diving deeper into today. We have our climate finance navigator and our data insights for financial inclusion toolkit. Excuse me. All of these products can be found on our website. There is a blog introducing them, and you can click more to learn more about each of these. So in today's conversation, I'm really excited to share a little bit more about our economic opportunity Datascape. Why did we come up with this product? What are we looking to solve with this economic opportunity Datascape? And how might you, your organizations, and stakeholders in the sector use this public product in order to help solve some of the current internal pain points or challenges that you might be encountering? So our economic opportunity Datascape really aimed to address a clear pain point. Stakeholders across the United States that are supporting the financial and economic well-being of communities often struggle to access disparate and non-standardized data. They are sometimes looking at data at US Census, which is incredibly rich data source, but they similarly want to look at Small Business Administration data, or they want to look at HUD, the Housing and Urban Development data. This data is not only across different websites, difficult sometimes to access. We need to do like a deeper dive to really find the data sets, download those data sets. When we do have access and download those data sets, they're not always normalized at the same unit of analysis. Some are census tract, some are census block, some are county level. It makes it very difficult for stakeholders to really think about painting a comprehensive picture of the communities that they're looking to support. And again, we at DataKind feel that this is a missed opportunity. There is a richness in these public data sets that provides critical insight. And so we tried to think about how can we support to stakeholders to really better leverage not only the data that's out there, but in the most efficient and effective way. So our economic opportunity Datascape actually aggregates over 10 publicly available data sets into a single product to have ease of use. These data sets have over 350 variables. And what we're hoping to do is to really provide these data sets at the fingertips of the stakeholders. Another important point for our economic opportunity datascape is that we actually have normalized all of these data sets to be at the same unit of analysis, which is the 2020 US Census Tract boundaries. And again, this provides stakeholders with the ability to think and look forward into time. Rather than having the data at the 2010 census tract boundaries, if they're able to access everything at the latest boundaries, how can they think about leveraging the data-driven insight that they can extract from this data, and look forward into leveraging these data-driven insights for programmatic investments or for strategic decision-making. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm actually going to do a quick walkthrough of the economic opportunity datascape. Again, time permitting, I will not go through everything, so I will encourage everyone to really take a look yourselves. There's also a very helpful demo video on the homepage of our economic opportunity datascape that can allow you to better understand the product and how you can best use the product. So I'm here on our eodatascape.datakind.org, and I'll post it in the chat before the end of the session. Can everyone confirm that they see my page here? Great, thank you so much. So for the purposes of this analysis, I will focus exclusively on New York City and really think of ourselves as one key stakeholder. Let's assume we are a CDFI or a community development financial institution who is looking to better understand the current community profile within New York City at a census tract boundary in order to leverage data-driven insights to distribute some financing and some funding. So under Explore the Data, we can here select a state. So let's go ahead and go down to New York, and a county. For the purposes of this analysis, let's just go for Bronx County. Again, we can select multiple counties at a time, but just for ease of use, I'm going to explore just one county for the time being. The boundary type right now available is census tract. I do want to note that we are in conversations with multiple stakeholders that would like to see potentially different boundary types available. So if you are aware of different boundary types that you use with your work, or that you know would be really beneficial to the sector at large, we always welcome recommendations and thoughts. Notably, some have been looking at county level boundaries as something that might be very interesting and helpful. So again, we always welcome your feedback. So again, here on the map, we can see the census tracts for Bronx County. And we can now explore the data. We have combined the data in key thematic areas in order to ease access around looking and selecting the data variables. We have some economic profile data, some environmental data, demographic data, banking and finance investment data, and housing data. Again, if you want to do a double click into all of the data sets that we're using and the description of each variable, we do have a data dictionary here for your disposal, at your disposal, apologies, with the links to the direct data sets that we've accessed this information from. We can then select the actual variables that we'd like to explore further. So for the purposes of this example, I'm going to select Gini index. I'm going to talk about CDFI fund investment areas, areas of economic distress. I'll take some HUD data, median income, and maybe select some demographic data. I will focus on Black or African American, Asian alone, and American. There we go. So again, as you can see here, as you select the data, the variables here appear. You can then remove them if you decide that you don't want them anymore, but it helps to validate the actual data points that you have been selecting. The preview of the data will allow you to just validate what you have selected. So yes, there will be GeoID and year, the state, the county, and you can then see here all of the different data variables that I have selected. This is just a preview, so it will not be the comprehensive data set that you have selected for the purposes of your download, but it does enable that extra step to validate and make sure that you are getting the data that you are going to use that will be most helpful to answer the questions or the research that you want to do. And we then click complete. You will then have the opportunity to download this data. Once you download the zip, you will have two folders. The first folder will be a CSV file with every single data point selected as per the preview table. There will also be a data dictionary in that zip folder so that you can always refer back to the description, the official description of what each variable means. So that is the version 1 of the Economic Opportunity Datascape that we launched earlier last year, in the fall of last year. And we are in the process of doing some deep user and stakeholder interviews to think about what would a version 2 look like? How can we enhance this product, which has an incredible potential, and think about a version 2? We've heard some really interesting feedback around thinking strategically around maybe an API plugin, maybe a mapping function for some visualizations, maybe even the opportunity to do some automated insights. We are very open to your feedback. How would you continue and want to use this product? Because we are developing the product for stakeholders like you. We want to make sure that this is a collaborative process and that anything that we're doing is anchored in the potential to really create long-lasting impact. I will pause there to see if there are any questions, and if not, I can talk a little bit about how others have used this EO Datascape, how there's potential to continued growth, and how we are very open to hearing your comprehensive and constructive feedback to continue to develop this product into something that will continue to be useful and impactful for the sector. I'm just going to pause for a moment and take a look at the chat. Oh, thank you, Nathan, for posting the link. Much appreciated. If there are any questions more generally about the Economic Opportunity Datascape, I'm happy to answer them now if you want to put them in the chat. If not, I will gladly answer those questions at the end as well. What's the breakdown of usage by government stakeholders versus community-based organizations so far? That is a fantastic question. Currently, we have connected far more with community-based organizations and CDFIs. We are in conversations with some network of organizations that really support government and policy, and we're looking forward to really deepening those conversations to support. But right now, the majority of our user base and the majority of the context that we have are CDFIs and community-based organizations. Please keep the questions coming. In the interim, I will continue with the presentation. So again, as you've seen in the demonstration, people will get access to a download of a CSV file that includes all of the data variables that were selected through your process. This is really an opportunity to create a data set that is unique to your organization's needs. We see some significant power in that. One is that we're selecting key variables across multiple disparate data sets, but also it's an opportunity to then combine that data with any of your internal data and augment your understanding of community needs. For the time being, we have not provided an upload feature where this can be uploaded automatically on our website. We just want to remain extremely mindful of ethical considerations around PII. And so we are having internal conversations to really think about if that is even an option we want to provide, or if there are alternative solutions that we can empower. But again, to kind of bring it back to financial inclusion and economic opportunity in New York City, just a few statistics as a reminder. I think what's really critical to remember is that, in New York City, Small businesses make up to a quarter of all jobs in the city. So small businesses are a critical kind of foundation of the economic drive of the city. Part of the reason why this economic opportunity escape is so important is that we have CDFI and SBA lending data to really start to understand how CDFI's community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations can support this critical part of the infrastructure, the economic infrastructure. Just as important, half of small businesses had unmet funding needs as of 2020. I unfortunately could not find yet a most recent statistic, but again, that goes to show how can CDFIs, banks, or other organizations leverage data-driven insight in order to then distribute financing to areas with highest need and highest opportunity. And again, in terms of just financial inclusion more generally, 9.4% of New York City households did not have a bank account, which is higher than the national average. And again, this goes to show that there is a clear need. How can we leverage data-driven insights to really fill this gap? How can we at DataKind empower organizations that are doing incredibly impactful work, continue to leverage data in a way that will then provide them the opportunity to uncover where need and opportunity are highest. And so how can people who are downloading data from our economic opportunity datascape use this data? Well, there are myriad ways in which you can do that. You can, in asking some really clear questions about the type of data you want to explore, you can do really simple things in selecting your data and doing some data insights and data visualizations. You can just look at Gini index. What is the income inequality across New York City? Again, many of these are known, but how can we do this deeper dive in combining multiple data sets? Can we look at the distribution of SBA loans by county? What does that mean? What are we learning about this? And what does that help inform in terms of strategic direction or operational investment? Again, something we're exploring as an additional feature is really kind of mapping data at the census tract level. How can we visualize the opportunities, the disparities across the 5 boroughs of New York City? So these are just examples of the work, and we know we are just kind of looking at the tip of the iceberg of the work that the Economic Opportunity Datascape can provide and empower for stakeholders like yourselves. And we're really looking forward to actually having a conversation with you in terms of what we'd like to see more of. What is potentially missing? How would you leverage this type of product in your work in order to get access to data-driven insight that can then help inform strategic direction and operational investment? So I will pause here to see if you have any questions. Feel free to put your name in the chat. We can make sure you can go off mute or plop your question directly in the chat. And I think as you're all thinking about this, my question to you is, how could this product help your work? And are there anything that, is there something you'd like to see more of? Is there something would be tremendously impactful to your organization? I think this is really the type of deep engagement and co-creation that we are engaging with stakeholders at the moment. And as we think of our roadmap for our version 2, we need to make sure that everything is anchored in real need and real potential for impact. Oh, yes, the loan diagram. Oh, absolutely. Apologies. I did go through that pretty quickly. Okay, is this just confirming this one is the one? Okay, so in this diagram right now, we are looking at the distribution of small business administration loan by county. Just as a primer, there are 2 types of loans. There's the SBA 504 loan, excuse me, which is primarily for fixed assets. So it's much bigger loans for real estate or buildings or really equipment. And so these are more long-term fixed rate financing. We then have the SBA 7A loan, which is the most flexible type of loan for small businesses. And it offers financing for things ranging from equipment to inventory or even business acquisitions. And so what we see here is, again, based on just the variables that I've selected for New York City, trying to understand, the differences in these types of loans. What are we looking at? Well, we're looking at these two loans by county. And we can see here that, the loan amounts do vary significantly by county, which I think is quite interesting to see. And we also see that, for example, the SBA 7A loans, which is again for general small business purposes, are more common, which makes sense. My assumption is that small businesses across New York City want to expand things by buying more equipment or inventory, or maybe getting a loan to expand their manpower. They will therefore request much more prominently the 7A loan program versus this 504, which is really for much bigger investment. And again, these are insights that can then be drilled down to a census tract level. How can we understand the different types of loans that are being distributed and where? Can we overlay this information with CDFI financing? Where are CDFIs also providing investment for small businesses? And based on that, where are there gaps? Where are there areas of opportunity? Where can community-based organizations or nonprofit organizations or nonprofit funders or even CDFIs, how can they determine this gap and say, this is where we know we can invest and we know we'll be able to impact because there is need and there's underinvestment. And again, I think the power of this is also combining with any sort of internal proprietary data that stakeholders have to really paint this incredible picture of, we know where we're distributing funds at the moment. We know that public data provides us with a real comprehensive community level picture. Let's put these two powerful data sets together in order to understand where might we have the biggest impact for our investments.
Yeah, data science capacity, and also just like, I mean, trying to understand what neighborhoods specifically could benefit from the resources that we provide and the services that we provide. So that, and in doing that, if we're going to expand to providing to those specific neighborhoods, how do we then collect data on the services that we're providing to new areas, so that we can later show funders, okay, this is what we're doing, this is how we've expanded our reach, and here's the data to prove it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Thanks for asking that. So I think you, in your question, hit the nail right on the head in terms of understanding that we cannot do any sort of data-driven or data science-driven insights without good quality data. It needs to start there. You need to really think about that data journey, that foundational data journey. At DataKind, in my portfolio of work, we did launch at the same time of this EO Datascape our DFIT product, our Data Insights for Financial Inclusion Toolkit. I'd encourage you to take a look at it. While we are, for that particular product, really focusing on financial service providers who provide credit or loans, there is an interesting thought process that you can read about from understanding what data to collect, and then how you can use the data to create some models, and how you can use those models to then generate key insights. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that, to just understand the arc of using data, from collecting data to generating data-driven insights. When it comes to the EO Datascape, again, I think Depending upon the capacity you have within your organization, there are multiple ways that you can kind of explore. You can download the data set in CSV and just do some very straightforward kind of bar charts and modeling, even just in Excel using that data. I know that people at my organization have mentioned that some of their stakeholders who don't have the time or capacity have actually uploaded data, which is again publicly available, so there's no risk to any PII. I do want to mention the always need to keep in mind the ethical considerations of data, but this is publicly available data. You can upload it into something like a chat GPT. And ask some questions leveraging the data set. Can you do a bar chart for this? Can you do a correlation analysis for this? It will be able to provide you some insight. And so again, for those organizations that are starting out in their data journey, that might be an interesting way to explore. You have the data set from the EO Datascape. You might not have internal capacity, but you can start leveraging some Gen AI tools to start to explore that data and visualize that data in a way that could be helpful to you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Okay, great. Oh, this is a great question. What are the biggest skill or resource gaps you see in the ecosystem today that prevent stakeholders from effectively leveraging the economic opportunity database? This is a fantastic question. So I would say that it's twofold. The first is given the stakeholders we are working with and have connected with most deeply right now, which are CDFIs, community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, it is very much a question of time. Do they have the time? They are right now, addressing a lot of multiple fires. They're trying to figure out a lot of the political landscape and the intersection with their work. So I think it is a question of time. Do they have the time to do a deep dive into better understanding their community? This is where we're hopeful that the economic opportunity database Datascape can really provide that leverage, is that we have aggregated over 10 publicly available data sets into a single product, and we're hopeful that that can save tremendous time and resources. The other, I think, is that many organizations are very excited to deep dive into data science and AI, but don't always know where to start. I think with ChatGPT and other large language models, people get extremely excited about data science and AI. They want to dive into this deep end of generative AI. That not that is not always the best solution. And so we at DataKind are really always in conversations, making sure to right size the solution to both the capacity of organizations and also to their ability to sustain solutions. So we are very much in favor of saying start small and simple, understand the foundations, and start to walk your way step by step towards some exciting potential generative AI solutions. I think the hype around LLMs and Gen AI is there. It's real, it's exciting, but we are very much in favor of foundations first and step-by-step approaches. So I would say that, potentially some resource gaps around leveraging and right-sizing the right solution for their need. Oh, George, that's a great question. What kind of feedback have you received from users, stakeholders thus far? Are there any additional features on the roadmap based on feedback? Yes. So the feedback that we've received so far from users is that this is an incredibly useful product. Again, notably to save time is oftentimes in all of our work. We know that saving time is something that we highly value. Um, and that it is very helpful to really aggregate data sets that they may not have thought initially about putting together to understand community needs. CDFI lending may not be top of mind for some stakeholders in the sector. Same thing for SBA lending, but the power of putting multiple data sets from multiple angles together is truly tremendous. So far the feedback is the economic opportunity escape is extremely useful, and they look forward to seeing additional features. Again, we've launched this fully knowing that there's a version 1 of our product. We developed this first version with and in close collaboration with some stakeholders, and we want to do the same thing for a version 2. The additional features on the roadmap, again, are still very hypothetical at the moment, but we have heard over and over again different types of feedback. For example, an API plugin. Rather than download the data set and then integrate it or append it manually with any sort of internal data or do some data analysis, how could they just automatically plug into an API and get access to that data to then, upload it into a CRM or something similar. Something else we've heard from stakeholders who are a little bit earlier in their data maturity journey are, it's great to have access to the data, but now what? How can we create some insights or visualizations that will help us to better understand the data and better understand how to interpret the data so that we know how to effectively use it? That is something that we are also looking to do a deeper dive into to really understand how can we support stakeholders that are at different parts of their data journey. Some are earlier on, but still want to really use this type of data. Others are really comfortable with just like doing an API plugin. I think some of the other features are a little bit more visualizations, as briefly mentioned earlier, above and beyond just some maps or some correlation analyses. Sorry, not some maps, some correlation analysis or regressions or bar charts, some maps. How can we start to map some of this data for people to zoom in on different census tracts, on different communities, and understand at a high level what each community has in terms of the profiles from the data that we're able to collect. And again, this is just the beginning. So if you do have some feedback, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I'm sure it will be available also, but feel free to email me. There's also a feedback form directly on our EO Datascape website. If there is some feedback, if you have some questions, we highly encourage you to use those features because we, again, are really thinking about this roadmap for next steps. And we cannot do it without the feedback of stakeholders like yourselves who would be using this potentially on a regular basis. I'm just going to pop my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out directly to me or just use the feedback function, which can be anonymous. Thank you. The statistics I include in the presentation. Any other surprising or interesting data points you've discovered? I think it was actually hard to select just some example summary statistics to kind of paint a very quick picture of New York City. I think they were certainly kind of, I would have appreciated a little bit more time to dive into the small business data, small business statistics to really understand with a community like New York City, how much small businesses contribute to the economy, economic opportunity. I would have loved to dive into a little bit more the distribution of small businesses across New York City. How does that compare to other communities? And would have loved to overlay some data. Always, it's just a lack of time, as unfortunately we've all encountered. But I did read some fascinating reports. They are in my sources of my presentation that I'm happy to share out if that's helpful. Some really fascinating reports on just the status of the economic opportunity and financial inclusion of New York City.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting this. This is really, really cool. Something I was kind of curious about, and I know it's kind of pointed at in the data dictionary a little bit, is how DataKind is thinking about people kind of like using the various different sources of this when comparing, one to the other, specifically given the fact that a lot of these are not only from different years, which is pointed at in the data dictionary, but also might cover different time scales. So for example, like the ACS, since you're using the ACS 5 years because you're on the track level, that's a 5 year aggregate versus some other data sources look like just for one specific year, obviously having different years. And then I do believe, again, I was kind of trying to look through all these data sources. Some of these are on the household level, some of them are on the individual level. So there's various different kind of levels of what these data sets are actually measuring. And I'm sure someone, like, if you're someone who works with this type of data a lot, you understand that it isn't often you can do kind of a one-to-one because different surveys are measuring different things at different period of time. But is there anything DataKind is kind of doing to make that? I know this is kind of almost me being Mr. No Fun, but like highlight those um, restrictions or limitations almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. That's a great question. So yes, we do acknowledge that every data set has different units of analysis. The power, again, of the economic opportunity scape is that we are normalizing everything to the latest US 2020 census tract boundaries. So that's really the power. And again, we don't want people who use the Datascape to use this data in a way that is you know, so specific that they assume this is the status of how our things are today. I think most people understand that with public data and government data, there is always a little bit of a lag time, but this is the best public data that we do have available to us in order to understand the status of communities. So we have, and I'm happy to follow up if helpful. We have used some really key resources for transforming the data to the 2020 US Census Tract boundaries. There has been a significant amount of like waiting and conversation and doing significant research before we did those transformations to ensure that we represented the community as effectively as possible. And we are happy to share that if that's helpful. I think these are all public sources, and we really used research backed sources and confirmed sources to do any transformation. But no, I think that that's a fantastic question. Again, I think the power of public data is that it is available to all. Sometimes the downfall is that it does represent communities at a snapshot in time that is not currently present, but it is the best resource we have at the moment to really be able to understand the communities from multiple different angles and perspectives. But I do appreciate that question. I think that's a fantastic point. You're welcome. Recognizing we are almost at time, happy to take one or two more questions if you have. If not, again, just a reminder you can email me directly if you have any questions or thoughts or follow-up. We have a feedback form also directly on the EO Datascape that we encourage you to use. If you have any ideas or recommendations of what you or your organization would like to see as the EO Datascape expands, please do share. And if you have additional questions like that that Adrian asked, please do share those as well, because we'll be happy to do a deeper dive with you on those answers.